Introduction. Right. So recently, I read a book called The Diary of a CEO, The 33 Laws of Business and Life by Stephen Bartlett. I enjoyed this book so much that I wanted to share 8 of my favorite lessons from it. 8 powerful laws that are already starting to change the way I think about my life and the decisions I make. My hope is that you might find some of these ideas useful as well. Now, if you haven't come across Stephen Bartlett before, he's an incredibly successful entrepreneur and also the host of the podcast, The Diary of a CEO. On this podcast, he has interviewed hundreds of some of the most successful and well-known people in the world. So if you're interested in personal development, entrepreneurship, or simply practical advice for life, then hopefully you'll enjoy this episode of Book Club, the ongoing series where we break down and discuss highlights from some of my favorite books. With that said, let's dive straight into it. Law number 1, fill your 5 buckets in the right order. The first idea is that when it comes to professional success, all of us have 5 different buckets. Bucket number 1 is what you know, which is your knowledge. Bucket number 2 is what you can do, which refers to your skills. Bucket number 3 is who you know, which is your network. Bucket number 4 is what you have, meaning your resources. And bucket number 5 is what the world thinks of you, which is your reputation. The key idea is that professional success comes from filling these 5 buckets, but more importantly, they should be filled in the correct order. Most people start their professional journey by gaining knowledge through school, university, reading, and learning. When that knowledge is applied in real situations, it becomes a skill. When you have knowledge and skills, you become valuable to other people professionally, which naturally helps your network grow. Once you have knowledge, skills, and a network, your access to resources starts to expand. And eventually, when you have knowledge, skills, a strong network, and resources, you build a reputation. This law can also help guide your decisions when it comes to your career. For example, if you are early in your career, this model suggests that you should prioritize jobs that help you build knowledge and skills, rather than focusing only on money, status, or reputation. So, if you are currently working in a job where you are not learning anything new, it might be worth reconsidering your situation, even if the salary is good. Another interesting point from the book is that knowledge and skills are the only 2 buckets that cannot easily be taken away. You might lose your job, you might lose your resources, you might lose your network or reputation, but you will still have your knowledge and your skills. As the book says, those who collect gold have riches for a moment. Those who collect knowledge and skills have riches for a lifetime. True prosperity comes from what you know and what you can do. The biggest lesson I personally take from this idea is the importance of consistently investing time in learning and improving my skills. Life gets busy, especially when you're running a business or managing responsibilities. But making time every week or even every day to learn something new can compound dramatically over time. Law number 6, ask, don't tell. The question behavior effect. The next idea is about the power of asking questions. This connects with something I've been thinking about for quite a long time. The idea that asking powerful questions can influence our behavior. In my own life, I've noticed that asking the right questions can dramatically affect the actions I take and the results I achieve. I usually do this through journaling. For example, here are some powerful questions I often ask myself. What do I really want? What would I do if I knew I couldn't fail? What would I do if I knew I would fail but still wanted to do it anyway? If I won the lottery and had $100 million in the bank, how would I spend my time? And if I repeated everything I did today for the rest of my life, would I end up with the life I actually want? Questions like these force you to think deeply and honestly about your life and decisions. But one interesting concept from the book is something called the question behavior effect. Instead of making a statement about something you will do, you turn it into a question. For example, instead of saying, I will go to the gym today, you ask yourself, will I go to the gym today? Research suggests that if you ask yourself this question and answer yes, you are more likely to actually follow through with the action. A yes or no question removes excuses and forces you to make a clear commitment. Law number 9, always prioritize your first foundation. This idea comes from a famous story told by Warren Buffett. Buffett once told students to imagine that when they turned 16, a genie offered them the car of their dreams. However, there was one condition. It would be the only car they would ever own for the rest of their lives. If that were the case, you would probably take incredible care of that car. You would read the manual carefully. You would protect it from damage. If there was even the smallest scratch or dent, you would fix it immediately. Why? Because you know it must last your entire lifetime. Buffett then explained that this is exactly the situation we have with our minds and bodies. We only get one mind and one body, and they must last for our entire lives. If we neglect them for years, eventually they will break down. This is why Stephen Bartlett calls health your first foundation. Without health, everything else becomes much harder. After reading this chapter, I realized I wasn't prioritizing my health enough. So I made some changes. I scheduled 3 gym sessions every week and started focusing more on stretching and mobility. The goal is to build healthy habits until they eventually become automatic. Law number 19, sweat the small stuff. Many people talk about the Pareto principle, which suggests that 20% of effort creates 80% of results. And while that idea is useful, the book argues that success also comes from paying attention to small details. Stephen Bartlett believes his podcast grew so quickly because his team obsessively focuses on small improvements. Instead of making huge changes, they constantly make tiny improvements. This idea is similar to the Japanese philosophy of Kaizen. Kaizen teaches that progress often happens through small daily improvements, rather than huge breakthroughs. Over time, these small improvements compound into massive progress. Law number 5. Lean into bizarre behavior. Another interesting idea from the book is that when we encounter things that seem strange or unfamiliar, our natural reaction is often to reject them. But the better approach is to lean into them instead. For example, when new technologies like artificial intelligence appear, many people avoid learning about them because they feel confusing or intimidating. But those who take the time to understand them often gain a huge advantage. When something seems strange or unfamiliar, ask yourself, why do I believe what I believe? Could I be wrong? What can I learn from this? Curiosity often leads to opportunity. Law number 21, outfail the competition. Another key lesson is that success often comes from running more experiments than other people. The more experiments you run, the more failures you will experience. but also the more opportunities you create for success. The important thing is to view failure as feedback. Even Barack Obama once said that you don't need 100% certainty to make a decision. You only need about 51% certainty. Once you reach that point, you should make the decision and move forward. Failure leads to feedback. Feedback leads to knowledge. Knowledge leads to power. Law number 25, negative manifestation. This idea involves imagining the future where things go wrong. Instead of only thinking about success, you ask yourself, why might this idea fail? For example, if you plan to start a business, imagine that 3 months later the business failed. What went wrong? Maybe you didn't get enough customers. Maybe you lost motivation. Maybe negative feedback discouraged you. Once you identify these risks, you can prepare solutions in advance. Law number 27, the discipline equation. The final idea is the discipline equation. Discipline equals value of the goal plus reward of the pursuit minus cost of the pursuit. To become more disciplined, increase the importance of the goal, make the process more enjoyable, and reduce the difficulty of doing it. Small changes, like choosing a gym closer to your home, can dramatically increase consistency.